All right, I'm excited to go through this information because money is a big deal. Not having money is an even bigger deal. There's so much going on in the economy. Gas prices are going up. The Federal Reserve is struggling to keep inflation in check. Housing prices go up despite interest rates going up. And so I've brought on a friend of mine, Michael Lush, the founder of Replace Your University. And we just want to go through some financial information to help people be in the loop on what's going on with the U.S. economy. Michael, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
As always, thanks for having me. It's a pleasure, Steve.
Yeah. So I don't know if you saw this or not, but Zero Hedge just put out a very detailed report where they show the Biden administration spent $500 billion in 20 days.
Oof.
I mean, I don't know how we are not going to. The interest rates are so high. Janet Yellen is now saying the United States will not be able to make its interest payments unless the Federal Reserve drops that. So they're putting pressure on them because number one, they can't financially afford it, and
Hmm.
then number two, we're heading into a presidential calendar year.
Hmm.
At the same time, uh, most people can't afford the inflation that's eating into their groceries. And so you and I were talking about how the United States might actually be not only heading into a recession in 2024, but possibly entering into a silent depression. And so I want to get into that because most people are feeling it, right? Like the mainstream media, they're trying to tell you Americans have plenty of money. You can handle these increases. The government's doing everything they can, when in reality, the government is really the biggest source of most people's problems.
Yeah,
Um, are you worried about? I know you used to be in mortgages.
correct.
Are you at all worried about there being a housing crisis coming
I
up?
am. I am to a certain degree. I think there's going to be a commercial credit crisis first, and then that will have a ripple effect into residential homes. A lot of banks are over leveraged. What I mean by over leveraged is they've lent out more money than what they actually have as far as fractional reserve lending, as far as deposits. So because of that, a lot of that paper is in commercial credit, where even in this building that I'm in now, I've got a year before my lease comes up for renewal, and they're already asking tenants here in this building, are you going to renew? And the reason being is they're building projections, but probably because they're wanting to offload this building, because most commercial paper is on 3-year arms. So if you think about when they bought this building or bought the paper for this building and the bank lent the money for this building 3 years ago, what were interest rates? They were really low. And now that those arms, adjustable rate mortgages or on the commercial side, are adjusting, their payments are tripling. So they can't afford it. So now they're trying to build projections in order to offload this building. So I think first and foremost, it's going to come on the commercial side, and then eventually it will have a ripple effect into residential homes as well. So it
Yeah,
could be good news depending on how you're positioned. It could be bad news depending on how you're positioned.
yeah. So they're lending out more money than they have fractional reserves.
Mm-hmm.
On top of that, they own a bunch of bond paper that is basically worthless because those low interest rates and now the higher interest rates. So it is a real concern. And I tell people all the time when I used to do retirement planning, you can't control the U.S. economy, but with education you can control your own economy.
Yep.
Now I want to jump into this, but you guys, I've sent a lot of people your way with Replace Your Mortgage. They've been really happy. I've gotten messages from people. I did it myself. It ended up saving us about $250,000 in interest that we would have just given to the bank, bought
Mm-hmm.
them a house, and bought
Yeah.
us a house. But you guys have an online workshop that's coming up. Can you tell us
Yes.
just briefly about that, and then I want to jump right into this stuff.
Yeah, actually, you kind of hit the nail on the head when you're talking about controlling what you can control and don't worry about the things you can't control. You can't control the U.S. economy, but you can create your own micro economy. And so we have an event that we call Create Your Own Economy. And what it is a 5-day event. And each night, we're going to go over different verticals of how you can insulate yourself from rising interest rates, the market volatility, wars going on, et cetera. So we're going to show you how to take control of your finances and not just get ahead, but stay ahead, hopefully generationally as well. So that will start on October 23rd at 5 p.m. Central Standard Time. We're going to do an hour of training, and we're going to do an hour of Q&A every single night. So that's going to be the entire week, starting from Monday through Friday. We're going to do a whole week, and we're not asking you to be there for the whole week. We're only asking for 1 to 2 hours at night once you get home from work, starting at 5 p.m. Central Standard Time. We're going to pour tons of value into it. It is not a free event because when you pay attention. So it's $97. But here's the good news is that $97, we have two foundations that we support: Heart of Champion Sports, which helps share the gospel to young athletes, and then Aerial Recovery. Aerial Recovery is really battling sex trafficking, not just here in the States, but globally. And to date, I actually got an update about 2 weeks ago. They saved over 8,000 women and children in the last 3 years alone from sex trafficking. So 100% of your proceeds are going to go to charity. We just want you to pay attention, and we want you to show up. So that's why it's not free.
Okay, so I'll make sure to put a link down below so people can learn more about that and decide whether that's right for them or not. But you and I have been texting back and forth. You were sending voice texts, and I was sending typed out ones. But help my audience understand after all the research that you've been doing, why you think we might already be in a silent depression and what that means.
Yeah, I'm going to spit out a lot of numbers, so try to follow along with this. So the last depression we had in 1930. So let's take a look at what prices were in 1930, adjusted for inflation, versus what they are today. So let's take homes, for example. Homes at the time in 1930 were at $3,900. That was the average price for a home. Now let's adjust that for inflation in today's terms. That equates to about a $70,000 to $71,000 home. However, today, the average price for a home is $416,000. Now, let's talk about food. Now, this is a crazy one. In 1930, let's say you have $100, right, a Benjamin, and you go to the grocery store, you buy $100 worth of groceries. Adjust that for inflation. Today, it would cost $2,059 to buy the equivalent of what it used to buy in 1930. Gas was 10 cents a gallon. Adjusted for inflation in today's terms, that's $1.73. However, we all know that gas prices are not on average $1.73 a gallon. They're $3.55 a gallon. Let's talk about new cars. New cars in 1930 were $860 on average. If you adjust that for inflation, that's equivalent to paying $15,000 today for a new car. But it's not $15,000 today for a new car. It's $48,000 for a new car. Now, let's now take all of the prices of this: home, gas, food, cars, and then let's take a look at the income of people in 1930. Their average income was $4,800 a year. Doesn't sound like a whole lot, but when you adjust that for inflation, that is equivalent to $85,000 in today's terms. However, what is the average American making? $56,000 per year. So not only prices substantially higher than what they were in the Great Depression, wages are substantially lower in comparison to those costs than it was in 1930. So that's why it's a big buzzword. It's trendy to talk about the silent depression. I feel like we're already in it, and it's only being exacerbated by the current administration and the current inflation points that we're at now.
Yeah, and I think everybody watching this would agree that their wallets are echoing what you just said.
Yes.
Where it's like, okay, my wages have not grown anywhere near as quickly as the cost of food, the cost of gas. I mean, I remember when the pandemic started, I was paying under $2 a gallon, and now I just filled up my Jeep at $4.30 a gallon.
Wow,
it's crazy.
Yeah.
And when you said in 1930 that $100 worth of groceries, my first thought was, I bet you didn't even spend $100 on groceries. And now it would be the equivalent. I mean, I remember when I was first married, granted I would buy rice-a-roni and other things, but to spend $50 or $100, that was food for the whole week.
Yeah. Oh, in 1930, $100 would be pretty close to equivalent to food for 6 months.
Yeah.
So realistically, when you go to the grocery store in 1930, you're probably spending in the neighborhood of $8 to $10, where now, I can't walk out of a single bag of Whole Foods without it being less than 140 bucks. And that's
Yeah.
just for one bag. So
Yeah.
yes, it is. It's pretty tough on people. And, those are things that you can't control. So now that we've given you the bad news, let's talk about the good news. So we'll create your own economy. There are 5 different things that we focus on. One is real estate. So a lot of your listeners and people that watch you are homeowners. And if they're not homeowners, they would like to be homeowners, but they're looking at the current real estate market like, it doesn't make sense to buy a house right now. It depends on how you go about structuring it. See, replace your mortgage really takes us back to the way that we used to finance real estate prior to 1913, prior to the execution of the Federal Reserve, and the way that mortgages used to operate. Mortgages used to be an open-end tool where money could move in and out freely. And what we utilize with Replace Your Mortgage are simple interest lines of credit, whether that's a home equity line of credit, a business line of credit, commercial line of credit, anything that's a simple interest line of credit. And again, you're hearing this from somebody that did mortgages for 17 years. And the person that let the cat out of the bag was a wealthy mentor of mine that's a hedge fund manager. At the time, he was worth $600 million. Now he's a billionaire. And he told me that, Michael, essentially what you're doing is you're doling out financial crack to middle America. The poor can't afford it and the rich don't use it. And obviously I knew the poor couldn't afford it. So I'm like, okay, the rich don't use it. Well, what do you use? You just pay cash? He goes, no, I own a hedge fund, for crying out loud. We're the kings of leveraging other people's money. So we still use other people's money. You just got to do it more efficiently. So if you look at a home equity line of credit, it's a simple interest line of credit. And I know there's myths and misconceptions out there. It's like, why would I get a home equity line of credit in this market? Because rates are so high. You got to know where to look, because like I was mentioning earlier, banks are over leveraged. They have more loans out there than they do in deposits. However, HELOC sits on a bank's balance sheet. But what comes with a home equity line of credit when you get it from a bank is typically they're going to also get a checking savings account, maybe a business account. So they're utilizing these HELOCs as tripwires to get new customers in the door to kind of bring their balance sheets back in line.
Okay.
Now, on top of that, banks have flooded the market with what we call promo rates. So there's lots of banks out there. This wasn't the case a couple of years ago, but it's definitely the case now. I actually just got a message from one of my assistants that's all she does all day long is research banks, that there's a bank in California that's offering 3.99% for 12 months. And I know you're saying, well, 12 months, that's not 30 years. But what we teach is a strategy of how to stack these promo rates. Me personally, I've had 1.99% interest on my home equity line of credit for the last 3 years running. And these HELOCs are essentially free. It's not like a mortgage where you're paying tens of thousands of dollars in closing costs to get. You can get a lot of these home equity lines of credit for absolutely nothing. So it's not going to cost you anything to renew those promo rates every time they're about to expire, keeping your cost of funds low. But that's just a tool. There's a strategy behind it too. And we got to stop giving our money to the banks at 0% when inflation is sometimes 8, 9%. The height of last year, June of 2022, was 9.1%. That means your money's going backwards. Instead, we have to wake up that money and give every dollar a job, and it needs to go to work for us. So what we do is we use the home equity lines of credit as an operating account. Since money can move in and out freely, we're dumping all of our cash into the home equity line of credit. It's freely accessible to us within 5 minutes. If we need the cash out of it, we can. But while it's sitting in there, it's suppressing the balance, the principal, it's suppressing the interest, and it accelerates the time. So our average client pays their home off in 5 to 7 years. Our average client saves $170,000 in what would otherwise be interest to a mortgage. So I get that the cost of things are going up, but there are things that we can do to mitigate the cost of going up. Not only mitigate it, but actually exceed it and get ahead. And that's just one component. We get into other things of how to not worry about the market, whether the market's going up or down. We just got a report about inflation and how now the Dow's down 300 points as you and I talk. The bond yields are going up. I think the 10-year is probably 11 basis points higher than it was earlier this morning, which means if you're out there shopping for a house, that means your mortgage rates are going to be higher. There are ways to combat this and to be far more efficient with your money. And there's ways to store it where it's not market influenced. So your money will continue to grow despite what the market does. And that way you can leave a legacy. There's two families. You got the Vanderbilts and you got the Rockefellers. Well, today we still talk about the Rockefellers as one of the wealthiest families, not only in the country, but in the entire world. But they had a system and a process in place. That's essentially what we follow. We don't follow the Vanderbilts. Anderson Cooper is a descendant of Vanderbilt's. He didn't get a single penny because that money's already been spent. It's already gone. It's already vanished. But there's a process of what the Rockefellers put into place to not only keep their wealth and to prevent it from being taxed, but also grow it for years to come. So there's lots of things that we're going to teach in this week-long event each night, and we're going to give you the opportunities live to ask questions in real time so we can answer any questions, concerns, or myths and misconceptions that you may have.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think it's going to be great. Are you worried about right now, President Biden last year, in order to help Democrats, save seats in the House, and they ended up dipping into the Strategic Petroleum Reserve big time. I mean, like hundreds of millions of barrels.
Yep.
They dipped into. It brought the price of gas down only about 30 cents. It's now come back, and they're saying that they're going to help America increase that oil production, but then they're blocking leases, they're canceling leases. And so you really do have this dichotomy of people running for president saying, we're going to build everything on electricity, we're going to build everything on gas, right? How much does gas influence inflation when it ripples out into all areas of the economy?
If not the most important component, one of the major components of inflation. Because you take a look at food. Most of us don't have our victory gardens. I do. I own a farm. I own 90 acres, so we've got our own garden. Back in the day, they called them victory gardens, and actually they were banned for a short period of time where you weren't allowed to have your own victory garden to kind of produce your own food. So most Americans, 99% of Americans, are getting their food from a grocery store. Well, they don't have farms that they're growing out back behind the grocery store, so they're having this shipped in. What are they having it shipped in on is trucks. And we're not talking about electric trucks. Electric trucks can only go 300 miles before they have to be charged, where a diesel truck can go almost 2,000 miles. So the price of fuel going up will only increase the cost of food going up, and vice versa. So yes, I thought what you were going to talk about was the establishment fund, because what was used to kind of bail out some of these banks in the last 6 to 8 months, which there will be more bank failures, probably 10 times the amount that was last year. A lot of people don't realize this. In a given year, 100 banks either fail or fold up under a larger bank. And in the next 12 to 18 months, there's going to be 10 times that amount. And if you look at what happened with Silicon Valley Bank and Republic Bank, what was used to bail out those banks was the establishment fund. So if you could just type in that key word, if you're watching this on the side, you want to go down a rabbit hole, type in the establishment fund, and where that fund came from. It came from the confiscation of the Americans' gold. Remember, for a short period of time, it was actually outlawed for you to have more than, I think it was $100 worth of gold in your possession. And if it was more than that, then they actually confiscated it from you, and it was banned that the private citizen could not have gold. So they took all of that and put it in a fund called the Establishment Fund. That has been growing ever since. I think we're looking at 80, 90 years now that's been growing. So guess what money was used to bail out these banks? The Establishment Fund and the FDIC, I might add. So they took the money from us, let it grow compounding interest year over year, and then used it to bail out these banks. So I find that to be a funny story and a neat little rabbit hole of a discussion to go down as well.
Yeah, absolutely. One of my worries, besides the banks having issues and this inflation that they keep calling it sticky inflation, it's like, how high are we going to have to raise these interest rates? And you have Jamie Dimon, the head of Chase Bank, he's now saying, if you guys approach 7 or 8%, you're going to collapse the U.S. economy. Like, businesses run on loans. They, these commercial real estate, they run on loans. And if you have thousands, tens of thousands of loans renewing at these higher rates, they're going to have to jack things up. People are going to say, we can't afford it. The foreclosures. I mean, we lived through this. I mean, what was there, like 10,000 home foreclosures a day in the Great Recession?
Yeah.
And all of a sudden you found yourself going, wait a minute, nobody's getting a mortgage here, right? So that's what I like about what you guys do is it's all about education. It's all about, hey, these are the tools that you can now control your own economy with, because the reality is you can't control President Biden. You can't control Donald Trump. You can't control the Federal Reserve or Janet Yellen or potential war in Iran or Israel or Russia. I mean, the world is in a little bit of chaos, and yet if you don't keep moving forward, you're going to get behind with your money. And so, you have to trust that America is going to move forward and be okay. And that's the other danger that I see is it is scary out there, but then people take their foot off the gas and they become too cautious. And then it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy of crap. Now I'm 60, 70 years old. I don't have the kind of money that I want. Well, this has been fascinating. The first thought that I had was, I wish I could jump in a DeLorean and hit 88 miles an hour and take the money I have now back to 1930. My goodness, I'd be a billionaire by now, or at least my family. But if you guys can help people build that family legacy, really understand the banking world, the borrowing money world, I think people are going to get ahead, because at the end of the day, understanding the proper use of debt to your advantage is what has made most people wealthy. Like Robert Kiyosaki, he's a billionaire because he understood debt, not because he followed Dave Ramsey's eat rice and beans. He used good debt and avoided bad debt, and now he's become exceptionally wealthy because of that. Remind my audience one more time about the event, and I'll make sure to leave a link down below.
Yeah, it's October 23rd. So it's Monday, October 23rd. It starts at 5 p.m. Central Standard Time, and we're going to go until 7 p.m. Central Standard Time each night. So Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And we're going to go over very specifically. We're not going to leave anything uncovered and really expose all the secrets. And this isn't something that you have to be a victim of. In fact, there are ways to profit off of what's going on right now. Lots of people do it. Lots of people relish in potential recessions and depressions. That's where the millionaires become billionaires. That's where the billionaires, if we look at, during the COVID era, what did Amazon do? What did Facebook do? Look at all these companies like Netflix and Roku. What has happened to them in times of distress? They were able to take advantage of opportunities. That is not exclusive to just the elite. It's exclusive to the knowledgeable. So you have to know this information, and these tools are easily accessible to the common American, and we're going to show you how to access these tools and grow your wealth, but also protect it too. It's not how much you make, right? It's how much you keep. So you need to be able to protect it. So instead of sitting on the sidelines and say, this is my lot in life, this is how much money I'm making, and inflation's going up and it's eating into my income via inflation, instead of sitting on the sidelines, how about preparing yourself and following some of these strategies and getting access to some of these tools so that you can get ahead and not only fight inflation, but like I said, stay ahead of it, way ahead of it.
Yeah. Well, and I love that the money that people put up, it holds them accountable, but you guys are just giving it away. You're donating it to two really good causes. Well, thank you, Michael, for coming on. That silent recession stuff is really, it's interesting, but it's sad at the same time.
Alarming.
Yeah, it's very alarming. And if we can help people get ahead, I remember my father-in-law's a multimillionaire. He's had a business that did really well. I asked him one time, what's the difference between the rich and the poor? And I expected him to say something like, the poor spend their money and the rich invest their money. And his answer to me was shocking. He said, they can afford to pay people to get the shortcut to wealth. And that's through knowledge, having a good lawyer, having a good CPA, having a good financial advisor, having education on, lines of credit and all of that. So anyway, thank you very much for coming on, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, Stephen.